Checkout tracking by the NPD Group brings you a receipt collecting system that gathers data anonymously through technology we created, providing your businesses with answers.
Yeah, thanks for everybody for turning up. I was expecting to be the only one talking with Liz this morning, and excuse my voice, this has been an incredible show, so way too many developers, way too many conversations, and way too much enjoyment. So hopefully it's a husky thing and you can hear me properly. Liz was saying, actually, we might talk in some way about user acquisition because the main focus of this feature is really going to be about cross-promotion and how to keep people coming in, keep users coming back. So that's really B7's focus. I'll share you some insights specifically about Outfit7 and how the company has used and the tools and also built a strategy where retention really is the primary KPI, where all other metrics hang off the back. So hopefully it will be interesting to see some insights from that. As Liz said, actually probably now we're getting close to 3 billion installs as we're talking today. Main characters within the IP for Outfit7 has been the Talking Tom and Friends series, but we do have other IP with considerable DAO in there as well. And if I look at a lot of developers, there are some developers actually have way more than the 3 billion installs, but if you look at their monthly active or daily active figures, as published around 250 million. Other developers come to me that I've spoken to had 2-3 billion installs. They're still only retaining about 3 or 4 million MAU. So clearly the company's been doing something right to get that kind of ratio of retention. And as you can see here, the monetization, cross-promotion, everything hangs off the back of keeping users coming back to the games. Next door, there are hundreds of developers. All the parties you go to, you see hundreds of developers, and they're all looking pretty much for one thing. At least the smaller indie developers are looking for one thing, and that's because they're looking for money, and they're looking for somebody to help them get users. And that seems to be the main focus. And as you can see here, I don't know if everyone can see that, but the metrics don't work. Most developers will continually make games and actually not get any money from it. It's a complete loss lead. But that conversation around wanting to get investment for user acquisition is really on the start of it. And it just goes to show that people maybe aren't thinking about, once they have users, what are they going to do about keeping them in the game for longer or keeping them coming back? And that's how I'm going to share some stuff with you on that one. So yeah, please don't leave me. But quite often, I guess you guys speak to the same people as I do. Do you feel that when you're speaking to these the developers, they have a strategy around keeping players in the game or keeping them coming back? Or is it very much focused on the main problem is, I don't have users. If somebody gave me users, then I would make millions. And it's only a tiny piece of the puzzle. So keep them coming back. That's the key thing. We released some article based on our founder, Samo Login of Outfit7, giving some insights on how Outfit7 was successul. B7 is a tiny part of that story, but gameplay clearly is the key thing. But don't let the gameplay totally get away without you thinking about how you're going to retain users and how are you going to monetize them, how are you going to make money. It's all very well, and we see it. Lots of starving artists for the hundreds of years, you know, and they make excellent artwork, but nobody's making any money from it. And that's really what do you need to focus on. This is quite interesting. If I look at all of them, we work with maybe 60, 70 different monetization partners in the company. And if I look at the revenues, ARPDAU is the key figure. We achieve from all the other partners. By far and away, the largest contributors, the biggest ARPDAU revenue comes in from sources that are initiated by the user, okay? Rather than things that are flashed up and pushed in the face. We're seeing maybe 4 or 5 times the revenue. And that also goes, you'll see in a minute, for cross-promotion as well. Those methods of where users are choosing to engage with the, you can call it ad unit, but using to engage with the brand far and away overshadows the revenues that you'd get from any traditional display advertising. Uniquely, and we'll talk you through what Outfit7 did. We at B7 have a rewarded gameplay functionality, and what we kind of wanted to do, there's a lot of rewarded methods in the marketplace, and they were kind of either rewarded installs or it wasn't actually rewarding the right behaviors. So what we decided was to test some theories around rewarding people for coming back and playing your games more often. And as part of a game developer group, that seemed to be the right behaviors to test. So this is the, sorry, let me take a little drink. So this is the kind of story of how it kind of came about. We had the company started out with one game, okay, Talking Tom. And there was a time that players on average were spending in the game. And set a target of how do you keep users in your game for longer, get a larger slice of their free time. So we had a game discovery portion of the game. It's a native icon, user initiated, and we started putting mini games in. And we saw retention 30–40% just by adding new content effectively to the game. And then we thought, well, if we rewarded people for their success in the mini games and gave them little incremental coins, not too much, but enough to encourage them to come back into the main game, what would that do? And it doubled our retention rates. There's a 100% increase almost, 80 to 100% depending on the game. So then the kind of epiphany came on, well, how about if we put all of our other games in to this environment, purely cross-promo, and we would create an ecosystem where the more they played the mini games, the more they paid the actual apps that we had, and we rewarded those users for the time that they spent and brought them back into the main game. And that started the ball rolling. So now we had 20–30 mini games, we had 10–12 of our own games, all driving users continuously back, and we decided, okay, well, why should we do all the heavy lifting here? This is clearly working very well. So just over a year ago, we allowed every game developer to hook up into this ecosystem. So now we have hundreds and hundreds of millions of users driving, with thousands of games, driving users back to each other's games and lifting retention in every single game. And it means also that I can create my own games, 20, 30, but I'm never going to be pushing out thousands of games. That's never going to be economical. So we can now, with other developers, help each other retain users in each other's games, and it's been phenomenal. So retention was quite interesting. The 30% increase is just from the cross-promo element. This does not include new statistics where third-party developers are driving that traffic as well. By day 14, when we measure Talking Tom retention without the ecosystem rewarded gameplay function, it's around about 80% difference. So it's a big factor. And of course, every other metric's going to be affected by this. The more you cannot monetize anybody that's not there, it's pretty simple. You keep them coming back, you have other opportunities for them to buy things, you have opportunities for them to engage in other advertising. And we're very focused on this. The company has proportionally fairly low in-app purchases. So becoming very clever and savvy about other ways, providing excellent content, but monetizing it through non-in-app purchase methods has been pretty key. This is the function. So does everybody recognize the game, at least? So users, again, you can see the little native icon there. We have just over 200 million views a day of the content section, which is quite sizable. And that's just in our own games. In other people's games, it's much higher. And so users go there to find new content. And that's where the mini-games is quite important, because you have to keep fresh content, people coming back. So user decides to look for new content. It's great. They're in the right frame of mind to discover new things. In this instance, this is Swamp Attack. So this is another one of our games. Decent size, just not quite as famous as Tom. The user can either choose to watch a video, pre-qualification there, and they decide they like the look of it. They go through to the App Store, and they install it and play it. And this goes for whether it's a cross-promo of our own games or working with other game developer partners. From then on, we create a permanent marriage between the first game, and this is Talking Tom, and Swamp Attack. So now, no matter how long or how many times the user plays Swamp Attack, they're going to get tiny little increments in Tom. And it's actually not that revolutionary, really. Hundreds and hundreds of years of retailing, and the US is famous for coupons and things, right? This is essentially just a digital coupon enticing people to come back to my store and spend their valuable time. So that's all we've done, really, is digitize that. We've talked about the retention. I mean, the figures differ depending on the game, but you can look anywhere between 30 and maybe 200%, depending on the type of game, increase in retention. So that's the insight, I guess. We've been open up to third-party developers for just over 13, 14 months. So the next bit is really just some highlights and insights of what we've been seeing. We're tracking a lot of users and a lot of preferences and a lot of games, and it's quite interesting just to see what's going on in that environment. Now, as I said, as a company, Outfit7 Group has partnerships with a lot of monetization partners as well. B7 is one of the solutions within that. I mentioned it before, the up-down, the revenues that we see from, and here is rewarded video or video in general, but also native user-led methods, far exceeds anything that we see from any other partner, display, push, advertising, etc. So I'd encourage you to walk next door as well, see some of those guys. They're great partners and can help drive a lot of commerce for your business as well. And that's really why we took the view to include video within our proposition as well. Users that are engaged enough to watch a video prior and kind of make a decision on games that they prefer are much more involved when they install the game. And we see a much higher retention, much higher in-app purchase actually from a user that's gone through that cycle of discovery. As I said, yeah, 200 million. This is actually a figure purely for our own games. It's much more if we look at the total views of the content discovery right now. So it's a huge base of content push. Whether you're just getting involved with cross promotion or you're working with other developers to help push users to each other's games. Go native for sure. Sort of beat on about this one, but if you have a look at the design and you, by all means, install help us get to 3 billion. Install the game and have a look at how we design this. The native implementations of B7 and of rewarded video are hidden. We're a little game controller icon that the user chooses to initiate with. Rewarded video, we have actually a little blue diamond. It just links up to the currency that you can see in the top left-hand corner there. Those methods, they've visited, it's 200 million views just of ours. It's on average coming like 2.5 times a day per user. So you can see that users are actually really into this. They're making the decisions whether they want to get engaged with you or not. Localization, we see an enormous difference, and it's actually a 30 times different. If you look at conversion rates for game discovery, they can range between 0.5% and up to 15%. So it's a massive difference. And where we have a big Asian audience, so we see a lot of, if you have Mandarin or you have Korean, and translating the languages into for people to actually discover it is quite a barrier. If it's all just English, then it's a huge barrier for most of pretty huge markets as well. So we can affect conversion rates purely by looking at the localization of language within the App Store itself or in this environment. Being part of the actual mechanics of the game, you probably talk to a lot of people. There's a lot of vendors next door, and the wisdom where they see great performance is by we have currency. They're putting discovery moments at a point where a user needs it to keep them on in the game. So if they hit a paywall or they hit some kind of barrier within the game, that's a perfect opportunity to offer them something like this to get engaged a little bit more and allow them to continue playing in your game. So there's some interesting. We've pulled out some statistics from around the world. So who's playing the most? Oops. Apparently, there's a lot of people in Southeast Asia playing games all day long, but clearly the US as well, and my hometown almost. It's Central Europe. We obviously work much harder in London than they do in Central Europe, although this would attest to not that fact. So per 1,000 players, actually Western Europe, and you've seen the Greek economic crisis, maybe they're making up the figures, are playing almost 3 times more than Asia. So it's interesting, interesting statistics. Not unsurprisingly, the weekend we see huge increases in daily active users. So it's not surprising that we see more activity on a Saturday and Sunday. Sunday's the key one actually for us. It's maybe 20–30% uplift even from Saturday in terms of numbers, and we're tracking thousands of different games. So it's not just our own games that kind of prove this one out. In general, 7 till 9, well, that would make sense. Everybody's finished work, a nice 9 to 5 like we all have. That's the key point where players are engaging. But not in Korea and Thailand, and these are huge gaming markets. 3 to 5 was quite a surprise, and I don't know the reasoning for this. This is just pure facts. 9 till 12 in Thailand as well. That's the biggest, not just discovery time, but also gameplay time. That's what, because we're rewarding gameplay. We're tracking when people are actually playing and when to give them the reward, so we can see what times people are doing things. That was pretty interesting. The 8 p.m., there we go, there's a consistent thing. If you're going to do some advertising, and this maybe is interesting for other communication that you have with your client base, maybe time it. So 7 till 9 seems to be the core time where people are receptive to receiving communications about anything. So maybe that's for all your push messaging, anything like that, that would be a good time to look at it. We're trying to compare the 3 territories of Americas, Asia, Europe, but actually it's fairly consistent. There's not that much difference in number of times people come to find new games and discover new content. But what this does show is that it's quite a high figure that are coming back time and time and time again. And I guess that's really the takeaway here, is that having new content for people to discover, which doesn't necessarily need to be made by you, still will affect your own retention in your own game. And that's part of the magic. So this kind of just proves that one. We've discussed this. This is the power of rewarding gameplay, and encourage you to kind of take a deeper look into this one. But it makes sense. If you have a couple of mini games that people are getting rewarded to drive users back, you get the power of 2 mini games. If you have a few more apps, you get the power of a few more apps. If you engage with all the other game developers out there and push users between each other's games, clearly you have hundreds of thousands of apps and hundreds of millions of users doing the same thing into your game. It's pretty logical that this is going to help with your daily active figure numbers, your retention numbers, and all of your other key metrics for monetization. As we said, the conclusion, the biggest and most effective ways that we see in all forms is where users decide to do something. We tend to, in our game discovery section, not have any brand advertising, because people are going there to discover new games, then it's important to keep that fairly clean. But anything that is initiated by the user is performing way in excess of something that is pushed at them. Clearly, everybody likes being rewarded for something, and it goes without saying. If you give somebody a little bit of love, they tend to spend a little bit more time with you, and you give them a reason to come back and interact with you, and not go off maybe and do something else. So that was key. We talked about creating a native, natural experience. Integrating it into the flow of any kind of discovery option, integrating it into the flow of the game is very important. And all of you have different types of games. But where users are stuck, you probably see analytics around drop-offs, and you try and fix that. But these methods are pretty useful in your kit bag to use at those points. If you're using analytics tools and things like that, you'll see those points within your game. So that was hopefully at least a few insights into what we did with Outfit7's games. Hope it was interesting. Does anybody have any questions, either for B7 or Outfit7? Yeah.
For the third-party games that are placed on the game
my own games, yep.
For the games on the game wall that are not B7 games, when you were talking about how you're linking to other studios' games. Yep. What is their relationship back with Talking Tom or any of the other games? Are they connected the other way, where they're rewarding players for playing Talking Tom, or are they using it more as an acquisition platform because Talking Tom has such a big user base?
Yeah. Well, yeah. The tool is very much about retention and cross promo, but as a default of having a lot of users, yes, for sure, developers are coming in and we're trading usually on an install basis. As a publisher, there are other ways of linking up, but yeah, usually it's a user acquisition, and then that's when the permanent relationship is set up. So if we then choose to, Outfit7, wouldn't be me, but Outfit7 chooses to buy users from another game developer, then yes, absolutely, it works the opposite way as well.
Any other questions? Yeah, I have one. You shared a lot of great insights. Is your presentation available for download?
Yes, I think, yeah.
Yeah, okay, on the Casual Connect site? Okay, yeah, super. We'll have a video link up on our YouTube site as well.
Fantastic.
Okay. One other question, John. How did the monetization partners that Outfit7 uses compare with B7 as a monetization tool?
So, yeah, as I said, the largest and most effective players tend to be the native rewarded video partners, and it's excellent revenue. The B7, and a lot of our publishers actually monetize much better than Outfit7 does, which is quite interesting. We have a lot of users, but we're the same or maybe 2-3 times the value of rewarded video. But the cool thing is, I mean, my advice would be, I see monetization as a stack, so choosing one or another, that doesn't make sense to me. Why would you lose out on a revenue stream? Because it's native, you're not competing for the same space anyway, so you're creating brand new monetizable inventory space. So I would definitely look at all native players and all video players, and see that monetization as a stack and a layered effect.
Okay, and B7 is on iOS now as well. You've recently rolled that out.
Yeah, it's been an interesting, when you do something that's not that normal, it does take a little while, especially with Apple, to sort of get over misconception of things. But yes, absolutely, it's Android, it's iOS. Actually, we're talking to Microsoft as well, so hopefully that'll be there soon as well.
Okay, John, thank you.
Thanks very much.